The desert had swallowed almost everything: towns, trails, fences, and even the memories of men who once believed they could tame this land. Wind moved endlessly across the dry plains, carrying dust like whispers from another world. Most people had fled years ago, chasing rumors of gold or greener soil. But one man remained, stubborn as the cracked earth beneath his boots. His name was Elias Carter. He lived in a weather-beaten farmhouse that leaned slightly to the west, as if even the building had grown tired of standing upright. The roof groaned at night. The wooden porch had splintered into jagged teeth. Inside, there was little more than a narrow bed, a rough table, and the ghost of a life he used to have. Sometimes, when the wind hit just right, he thought he could still hear laughter in the corners of the rooms, a woman's gentle voice, a child's hurried footsteps. But when he turned, there was always nothing. His wife and son had died of fever nearly 20 years ago, taken within days of each other. The town doctor had done what he could, but in those days, sickness often wrote its own ending. After the graves were dug and the neighbors stopped visiting, Elias simply stopped talking. There seemed no point. Words felt useless when they couldn't bring the dead back. People in the nearest settlement knew of him, though few ever visited. They spoke of him like a legend that made them uneasy. Some said he was cursed. Others claimed he'd gone mad from loneliness. Children dared each other to sneak near his land and touch the old fence posts before running away screaming. Elias didn't care. He preferred the silence to the noise of pity. His days were simple and harsh. He woke before sunrise, tended to his thin rows of crops, patched whatever the desert had broken during the night, and spoke only to his aging horse, a creature as worn and patient as he was. The animal never judged him, never asked questions, never reminded him of what he had lost. One evening, driven by necessity rather than desire, Elias rode into the dusty frontier market to trade what little produce he had. The place buzzed with rough voices and harder laughter. He kept his head down, finished his business quickly, and turned to leave when a scrap of conversation drifted toward him, carried by the same careless wind that ruled his life. "She's the last one," a trader said quietly. "An Apache woman, captured, no family left. No tribe coming for her," another man scoffed. "They'll sell her tomorrow." "Cheap, too. Ain't nobody wants that kind of trouble." Elias froze where he stood. For reasons he didn't yet understand, those words settled deep in his chest. Heavier than grief, heavier than loneliness. And for the first time in many years, sleep refused to come that night. Morning came harsh and bright, as if the sun itself had no patience for mercy. Dust already hung in the air when Elias rode into town again, his horse's slow hooves stirring memories he wished he could bury. He told himself he was only there for supplies, that whatever he'd overheard the night before meant nothing to him. Yet his body moved with a purpose his mind refused to admit. A crowd had gathered near the center of the market. Men leaned against posts, women watched from shaded doorways, and children whispered with the kind of curiosity that often bordered on cruelty. At the heart of it all stood a wooden platform, newly hammered together, its boards still pale against the sun. She was there. Chains circled her wrists, the metal biting into skin already marked by hardship. Her clothes were torn and dusty, her dark hair falling in tangled waves over her shoulders. She stood still, almost unnaturally so, as if movement would somehow give the onlookers the satisfaction they craved. Some in the crowd snickered. Others stared with open suspicion. But no one looked at her the way Elias did, not with quiet recognition of pain. A trader with a thick beard and sharp eyes stepped forward, raising his hands for silence. "You all know the story," he called out. Found her wandering alone past the ridge. No family, no one to claim her. Ain't got the means to keep her, so she'll go to whoever's willing to pay. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Someone shouted a cruel joke. Another laughed too loudly. Elias felt something twist in his stomach. Something he hadn't felt in years. Anger. The trader began to name a price. But before the words fully formed, Elias stepped forward. The sudden movement drew every eye. Slowly, deliberately, he placed his small pouch of coins onto the rough wooden table beside the platform. The sound they made, soft, final, cut through the noise like a blade. "You're serious?" the trader asked, studying him. Elias met his gaze without flinching. As a man can be, a ripple of reaction swept the crowd. Heads shook. Voices muttered warnings. "That's foolish," someone said. "You're asking for trouble," another added. "She'll gut you the first chance she gets." Elias did not answer them. He kept his eyes on the woman. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Her gaze was steady, dark, and fierce, not the empty stare of someone defeated, but the sharp awareness of someone who had endured more than most could imagine. The traitor hesitated, then shrugged and reached for the key. The chains fell away with a dull clatter. No cheers rose. Only uneasy silence followed as the woman stepped down from the platform. She did not run. She did not bow her head. She walked toward Elias with the slow caution of someone who trusted no one, and yet with a strange, undeniable dignity. When she stopped beside him, the crowd seemed to hold its breath. Elias turned without a word and began to walk away. After a moment's pause, she followed. The ride back to the farm passed in heavy silence, broken only by the rhythmic creak of the saddle and the low whistle of wind across the open land. Elias did not look back to see if the woman still followed him. He had learned long ago that watching too closely often led to disappointment. Yet in the corner of his vision, he sensed her presence, steady, deliberate, as if every step had meaning. When they reached the farmhouse, he dismounted slowly and gestured toward the porch. He opened the door and stepped aside, offering her the choice rather than the command. Inside, he placed a plate of food on the table and poured water into a tin cup. Then he sat on the far side of the room, his posture calm, his hands open, as though to show he carried no threat. She studied everything, the walls, the windows, the worn floorboards, and finally him. Her eyes missed nothing. They lingered on the rifle mounted above the fireplace, the old family photograph turned face down on the shelf, the scars on his hands that spoke of years of labor and loss. She ate slowly, cautiously, as if expecting the world to change its mind at any moment. Days passed in a fragile rhythm. She remained quiet, moving through the small farm like a shadow. Yet Elias began to notice subtle changes. The broken snare traps he had neglected were suddenly repaired. The garden rows, once struggling against the stubborn soil, began to show fresh signs of life. At night, the usual distant howls of wolves faded, replaced by an almost sacred stillness. He did not question her about these things. He had learned that trust grew best when it was not forced. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, she sat on the porch beside him for the first time. The silence between them felt different now, less like a wall, more like a shared language. After a long while, she spoke, her voice low but unwavering. "My name is Ayana." The word settled into the air as softly as ash. Elias inclined his head, accepting it with the respect it deserved. She did not stop there. Her gaze remained fixed on the distant hills as she spoke again, each word carrying the weight of memory. She told him her people had been hunted, scattered, betrayed from within. A man who once swore loyalty had sold their hiding places to mercenaries. For coin and favor, most had fallen. A few had fled. She had been told to survive, to carry what was left of them into the world. "They will come," she said quietly. "The ones who silenced the others. They do not leave witnesses behind." Elias listened without interruption. When she finished, he stood, crossed the room, and took the rifle from the wall. He checked its weight, its balance, its truth, not out of fear, but out of resolve. For the first time in decades, his hands did not feel tired. They felt ready. Outside, the wind shifted, as if the land itself had sensed the change.